been a while. Good morning, everybody. I'd like to call the meeting to order at exactly 10 a.m. And if I could ask Deputy Mayor Armour to please read the land acknowledgement statement.
Oh, there we go. It's on. Morning, everyone. I would like to respectfully acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe under the terms of the Robertson-Huron Treaty No. 61 of 1850 and the Williams Treaties of 1923. We commit to acknowledge, learn, educate, create opportunity, honor sacred places, and take actions towards real truth and reconciliation in support of our commitment to walk in the path together in respect, peace, and harmony for future generations.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. I do have a motion moved by Councillor Morrison, seconded by Councillor Renwick. It is recommended that the Special General Committee meeting agenda dated Thursday, January 11th, 2024 be adopted as printed and circulated. All those in favor? And that carries. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Okay, seeing none, we can move right along. And with that, I will ask Councillor Morrison if you would take over as chair, please.
Indeed, thank you, Your Worship. And moving into the report section of the meeting, I would like to, first of all, read a motion to suspend the rules of procedure. I have a motion moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Deputy Mayor Armour. It is recommended that committee suspend the rules of procedure relating to speaking order and limit for the purpose of agenda items 5.1.2 and 5.1.3, and further that all rules of procedure will be reinstated once the agenda items have been completed. Any questions on that motion? Call the question. All in favor? That carries. On that. And with that, I am going to bring up Colleen McDonald for 5.1.2, report number HR 2024-1, Parks Department overview, and I will have our Director of Human Resources, Lisa Smith, on virtually for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Morrison. And Lisa, we see you. Thank you for being with us, even though you're under the weather. Appreciate it very much. So I know that within the agenda package, you all had the graphics in front of you to view and to review. However, there are a few reasons why I did choose to print hard copies. One reason is because I had a request from a councillor to do so. The other is I think it's important for each of you to be able to focus in on individually the areas you want to look at as we have a discussion, instead of me trying to manipulate it on the screen and jump back and forth. In this day and age, none of us take printing hard copies lightly. But in this situation, I don't think of these hard copies as a single-use piece of paper, because I look at this product, and I thank Lisa Smith very much for the effort she put into creating this graphic. Tina and I fed her lots of data, and I'll make sure everyone recognizes who Tina is. She's our lead hand of Parks and Horticulture, sitting in the gallery. We fed her the data, and she came up with this beautiful demonstration of the details. And so I'm going to say that if a picture's worth 1,000 words, this graphic is worth 1 billion words, because it speaks volumes about everything that we do. I look at this, and I hope each of you will take this home and, you know, maybe hang it in your home office and refer to it whenever you want to. I know that myself and my staff are particularly proud of everything that we deliver for this corporation and for the community. So with that, I'll try not to bore you to death with any details. However, I think it's important to sort of start at the beginning, and recently I've changed jobs, and I'm now in in operations, which isn't a department change, but I'm now manager of operations. But I did spend 14 years in parks and cemeteries, and I'd like to think along the way I've learned a few things and adjusted and adapted to the changing work environment, the changing demands, all of those things. Our lead hand of Parks and Horticulture, she's been with us for 8 or 9 years. So she's got a lot of history, and as we've gone through each year, I mean, COVID being major changes and reflections on the community needs then, we've adapted, and we like to think of our department not just as parks, but also continuous improvement. So the proposal we have before you, what I'm going to suggest is they're not new positions at all, they're different positions. So what we're proposing here is a more efficient way to spend our every hour of labor in order to deliver those tasks to the community and for the corporation. In that we're suggesting a model that's more full-time staff as opposed to part-time hours. This is in a big part because of we recognize the investment we make in each and every individual that comes in the door, and with a turnover rate of 60%, I can tell you that I'm not going to say wasted time. I'm going to say the investment in time to go through that every season is tremendous, costly, frustrating, and so for continuity and so that we get a better return on investment in all of that energy and time and money we put into those individuals who are new hires, we feel like this is the more efficient model. We're attempting to right-size our department. This is a good first step. Going into budget discussions at the senior leadership team, what we said we needed was 8 full-time positions. Knowing that was probably not palatable, knowing that was a big shift, what we pared it down to are not 4 new positions, but 4 different positions, and giving up a lot of the part-time hours, hoping that, planning that we can actually achieve things much more efficiently by investing our efforts in the right spots. Seeing this in a colored infographic, it's like, to me, it's something that I know all of our staff are proud of. I'm certainly at the conclusion of my presentation. I'm open to answering any questions that you might have. And I think one more very important note is that corporately, I've detailed it in my report, corporately, this is a request from the corporation, not just the department. So I know that the support is there from the CAO's office, as well as many connected to, departments, because we do have a lot of interdepartmental dealings. And we are lucky enough that we get involved in a lot of different projects across the board that are maybe little one-off things, but we enjoy doing that kind of stuff, and it makes our community better. We build that culture out there that we're doing great environmental projects, and maybe we don't have a department to handle all those individual little things, but we'll be there. We'll be there, and we'll help with support, it makes us a richer community for all of those little projects that come along that maybe don't have a specific department for it to fall to. So we don't ever want to be in a position where we just absolutely can't take on a one-off, a Christmas tree at Kent Park, whatever it might be, because that's part of our function, and we know that. So in my recommendation for options, we really have, we've given 2 options in the report, and one is that we change the model to 4 full-time staff by eliminating more than 4 part-time equivalents, part-time hours. And again, this is about efficiencies, and this is about having the right tools to do our jobs. And by tools, I mean the right people in the right places, and all of that type of thing. We certainly are a 7-day-a-week operation through all seasons of the year. At one time, many years ago, that wasn't the case. And the other important note I'll mention is that pre-COVID, we did have 2 lead hands. And then during the challenges there, and we didn't have a floral program or as much of a floral program through that year, we did eliminate the 1 lead hand position. So this is giving us back what we need to have that 7-day-a-week supervision of the operation as well, for consistency in delivery and doing our best to achieve excellent customer service for the community. So at this point, unless anyone has any questions, I don't think I have anything else to add. And if there's anything specific that you want to look at or ask questions on the infographic, the map I've included for you shows a 1 garbage run. It's 278 kilometers, and in the summer months, we do that daily. So it's a lot of work, and we're asking to right-size our department to get the tasks done in the most efficient manner we can. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Colleen. And I'd like to give a huge thank you to you, Tina, and Lisa, and everyone that worked on this. I know it's information we needed, but to present it in this way is so much better, especially for Helena. I know she likes, she loves visuals. So thank you. And I'm going to open it up to Mayor Alcock first, and then we'll go around the table.
Thank you, Chair Morrison, and I would echo what Chair Morrison just said about all of the work that is done, and I love these visuals as well. It sort of jumps off the page, and you realize, holy cow, I don't know how it all actually gets done. But I do have a couple of specific questions, and I know there are certain references in the report, but might be useful to highlight them. And that is, there's reference to the Parks Department has not had an increase in resources for a number of years, but the increase in the activities has grown substantially. And I guess if you wouldn't mind giving examples of how our increased development in the community has a direct impact on the work that your staff does, or former staff.
Thank you, through Chair Morrison. So one example I'll bring forward to you is the, and it impacts winter and summer, so the Brookside development off of Chaffey Township Road. So that one is fully our responsibility now. And over there, so we have a very large traffic circle in the middle of the street, and it was installed during development, and it's a huge space to weed. And not only that, but there are some other linkages. There's a playground in that area that needs to have grass cutting, litter pickup, maintenance, that type of thing. And so that's sort of the tip of the iceberg of the expansion out that way, that one, and Selkirk area. And then, of course, right beside that area, we have Homestead, we have the Woodstream, which is a larger development. So that one is just coming at us, and different phases. So we have to prepare, like, for example, last summer, we didn't have enough staff to do some of that gardening, weeding in some of the new areas. We had to hire contractors. Contractors don't always have the availability to come when we want them, and that's no one's fault. But in order to have the in-house staff to be able to manage all those things, we can keep them to an acceptable level, and we're not at the mercy of availability of other people. And we're out in that area anyway, so we need to obviously have a better communication going forward when things are coming online, and what that equates to in a staffing need.
Thank you for that. If a quick follow-up, I think actually you got there, and that was, we all are very keen around this table with our ongoing development that we incorporate active transportation, new trails, connectivity, sidewalk, all of the things that you know. And so I think that going in the future, and you just alluded to this, Colleen, that it would be useful to say this new development, we've asked for this pathway, they said they would do it, and it turns over to the municipality. It will require from an ongoing maintenance, this amount of work, resources, whatever. And I think that would be a good change going forward for all of our documentation, just so that we're aware that, yes, this is great, and this is how much it will cost. And certainly, it's not just us, but the public will understand that too, because I know I get a lot of feedback how great it is if we are building these trails and parks. We, of course, need those, but there is an impact, a direct budget impact. Thank you for that. I have a couple of others, but you can.
Councillor Stone?
Thank you. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought I saw a number of 4,000 part-time hours in the past year. And going forward, if we had these 4 positions full-time, what would that 4,000 go down to?
Through you, Chair Morrison, so it wouldn't be 0. So we do still need some part-time hours, and those would be for specific locations such as the locks, the Brunel locks, our horticulture program, and then a few hours representative of our 7-day-a-week operation, ball diamonds and grass cutting, but significantly less,
Thank you.
not 0.
Councillor Fitzgerald?
Thank you, Chair Morrison, and thanks, Colleen, and everyone who worked on the report. Excellent job. I support what you're proposing here. I think it's long overdue. I see the staff on a daily basis out taking care of their tasks every day, and I think this sends a message that we appreciate their efforts, and maybe we'll encourage them to realize that we do appreciate it and take their job even more earnestly. Sends a clear message that we respect what they do, and it sends a clear message to the public that we want them to have the best facilities, a clean environment, and that we're a responsible employer, you know. And I like the savings of the turnover and less stress on the staff for turnover. I just, there's nothing bad about this, so great job.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzgerald. Deputy Mayor Armour, and then Councillor
Thanks,
Schumacher.
Chair Morrison. Just a quick one to Colleen. So currently, Colleen, we have 5 staff, so 1 lead hand and 4 park attendants, correct?
Correct, and some seasonals.
And some seasonals. So the request is to add 4 more park attendants and 1 more lead hand. So I'm just wondering, are they going to work together, or is it going to change this shift patterns, or is it just how that's all going to work together? We're having 2 lead hands and 7 employees, I guess, full-time employees.
Through you, Chair Morrison. So the request right now is 3 park attendants and 1 lead hand. But yes, so for example, and it'd be different each season, but they will all be 1 crew, just spread across the 7 days. So one example may be 4 people on 10-hour shifts from Saturday to Wednesday, the other 4 on Wednesday to Saturday. And so that we're getting excellent coverage across the 7 days, adequate supervision while the tasks are going on, and hitting all the right spots. We do this model at sometimes in the summer months, and then when we have big projects, we know that everybody's in on a Wednesday, so that's when we tackle the big stuff. So between the lead hand and myself, we've tried a bunch of different models, and also taking into account what the current labor force thrives on. So we're listening when we know what makes our staff happy. They work hard for us. We want to make it as palatable to come to work and be productive, because they thrive on being productive as well.
Thank you very much, Colleen. Over to Councillor Schumacher.
Thank you, through you, Chair Morrison. Mine is more of a comment. I'm kind of echoing Councillor Fitzgerald. I really appreciate the map, because I know I had asked you the last time to sort of detail the kilometers, and I know sort of the south end of Huntsville for sure very well, and like to go from number 4 in blue all the way down to number 5 in blue all the way down to number 5 in purple is quite the distance, and that's even only half of the town kind of thing, right? So yeah, I'm in full support of this. I know the great work. I mean, I know myself, I don't really like cleaning my bathrooms, and I don't know how many of the rest of us really do, but though, as you alluded, your team takes pride in the work that they do, and it's much appreciated. Being local here, I probably have been, maybe a little amiss about it, but I know Councillor Fitzgerald and myself have really gotten some good reports from, say, the Port Sydney Beach area, from people who, haven't lived here all their life. They've lived other places, and they come here and they say, wow, this community really takes pride in the parks and the work that they do here. I'm coming from a community south of here where that's not the case, where they don't put the effort into the horticulture and into the parks. And so we're getting a lot of those, especially people who have moved here since COVID, as you alluded to, and they really have noticed the work that you guys do. And I think this is just going to make it that much better. Being the chair of community services, I realize, as Mayor Alcock had pointed out, we have a number of increased activities and things. This isn't just a Monday to Friday service anymore. This is a 7-day-a-week service, and we need to be responsive to our customers. And I believe that this, at least, is a good start for us to be able to be that responsive to our customers, where your team gets to be very customer service focused and be able to respond to the needs of everybody on the weekends. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Clucci, and then Councillor Renwick, and then Councillor Clark.
Through you, Chair. Good report, Colleen. I support it wholly, but I'm just wondering, when we have events on, like the Ironman through the summertime, your employees are helping out with those events in certain ways, so is that taking them away from their regular duties? And also, how much overtime are we paying? Do you know a percentage of any overtime that we're paying to, because we're such short employees now? We got to pay extra in overtime to get the work done. So how much do you think percentage of that, of money that if we hire full-time employees, takes away from that cost of the overtime?
Through you, Chair Morrison. So a lot of our involvement for events, and each one's a little bit different, is we're involved in the sort of site prep ahead of the event. Most events are self-governed, self-run. And we, through the SEAT process, we make them identify those operational plans and all that type of stuff, but we don't have someone that you would call like a special events organizer. Some municipalities have those positions, but we're really responsible for doing the prep, and we are not necessarily there when the events are going on. Of course, and again, it varies quite a bit from one event to the next. There's sometimes stuff for us to do cleanup after the event, but oftentimes that's not until the next day when the event has totally cleared the site. So there are occasions, like we do have an on-call system where there's an emergency or a bathroom's out of toilet paper, something like that, we can send a staff person back in. But at this time, we're not staffed heavily enough to have more involvement in those events. And even with this shift from part-time hours to more full-time hours, we still don't have the capacity. And I tried to highlight within the report that what we're suggesting here in this modified work setup is getting us to status quo, just a more efficient status quo. So it's not necessarily saying that we're going to be more involved in events, and to be honest, like, again, most of them are self-sufficient as far as running the event and that type of thing.
But we are, in our regular duties, even beyond events, we are paying employees overtime to make up for like, because we're such short-staffed. Are they getting overtime for their extra hours worked?
Through you, Chair Morrison, there doesn't tend to be a lot of overtime.
Okay.
We work that into our daily. It's
Okay.
sort of, we see the events that are on the calendar, we staff for it, and we make sure that we prioritize on any given day, weekend, week, so that the events get that extra care. But again, it's more the on-site preparedness,
Yeah.
and then the cleanup after the fact,
Okay.
depending on the individual event.
And I think that everybody has to realize that your department is basically the face of Huntsville. When people drive in here, they see how clean it is, how the grass is cut, the sidewalks are clean, everything like that. And I think we have to continue to do that and even expand on it as we grow. Thank you.
Thank you, Monty. Over to Councillor Renwick.
Thank you, Chair Morrison, and thank you, Colleen and Lisa, for the report. Councillor Morrison took the words out of my mouth. I do appreciate the visual nature of this. And I think from my perspective, actually, I have two very quick questions, but just a comment on the fact that I'm downtown a lot, so I see a lot of the downtown aspects of what happens. But it's great to see a map where, as Councillor Schumacher said, that it's not just downtown. It's you know, the park. It's way bigger than that. My question for you is, does having these extra staff give you and your team the need or the ability to fulfill all of your requirements? Like having this additional staff, are you going to be able to sustain for the next couple of years, provide service for the town at an easier level for your staff to do this? And do you think there will be less turnover because of that?
Through you, Chair Morrison, I do feel there'll be less turnover, for
Okay.
sure. This is a model that we're going to observe over the next season. Due to growth, I do feel like next year during budget season, we're potentially going to be requesting more staffing, additional staffing. So this is not necessarily adding bodies, it's converting them from part-time hours to full-time, which will help us to do status quo, but there is growth, obviously.
Right.
And so, as I mentioned earlier, like we had come in saying the need is actually 8, but we know that's probably unachievable at this point. So the fact that it's 4 this year, it potentially might be 4 next year,
Yeah.
to be honest. But again, we're gonna have this whole season, the rest of winter into spring, summer, to observe, and we'll have a new director by that point as well, a new parks manager, and we'll be working to say, we're continuing to right-size and find that perfect blend of what we need. Some students, of course, still for certain aspects, but the majority, and by making full-time positions will result in much less turnover.
And if I may just a follow-up. When somebody is full-time, do you foresee, Colleen, any problems having the scheduling of a full-time person, that they like the 9 to 5 or the 8 to 3 or 8 to 4? When you have part-time people, you can kind of schedule them in the off hours, the weekends, the evenings. But with full-time, do you think with 4 full-time people, you'll be able to still cover all of those hours and not have to worry about, well, I want to do 9 to 5 or I want to do 8 to 4?
Through you, Chair Morrison. So within our industry, it's typical of any municipality or private business that offers these types of services. They recognize that we have to function when the demand is there. And so within our job advertisements, all those types of things, interview process, we speak at length about it, so it's not a surprise to anyone. And even as far as the winter seasons, like we often have staff in at 4 in the morning until, not the same staff, till 8 at night. Yeah. So they recognize those types of outside of the 9 to 5 are totally normal. So yeah, scheduling them for those situations is not a problem, and we make sure that we've got the language within the job description, the interview process, everything, so that it's no one's surprised when it happens.
Thank you, Colleen. Over to Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair Morrison. Thanks, Colleen, for the report. This might be more of a question for Keith Duncan, I'm not sure, but I understand there's challenges with part-time staff, and I hear what you're saying about turnover, vacancies, and it causes frustration. I'm just wondering, what is the percentage difference in staff wages and benefits with part-time as opposed to full-time staff? I think it would cost us more overall in staff wages and benefits for full-time. For instance, does it cost 10 to 15% less for a part-time employee than full-time? Just wondering. Thanks.
Yes, I can definitely speak to that, Councillor Clark, and through you, Chair Morrison. So when it comes to the fringe benefit costs for employees, for a full-time employee, we typically budget in or around 30%, and that would include things such as the OMERS pension plan, health and dental employee benefits, and then for a part-time employee, which a seasonal employee would fall under, we typically budget in around the 20% mark for that. So there is obviously a cost savings between a full-time permanent versus a part-time, seasonal individual. And then when you look at occupations, the full-time parks employees are classified as parks attendants. And there's about an $11 an hour difference between a parks attendant wage versus a parks labor wage, where most of our seasonals are employed as in the summer seasons. But in the winter seasons, due to the demand of the job, we employ seasonal park attendants just for the winter months because they are doing the exact same job functions as a full-time permanent parks attendant does.
Thank you, Keith. I think that's it for the rest of the crew. So Mayor Alcock, you can go back. I think our CAO wants to say something as well. After, yeah.
Okay, unless you want to go first. I thank you. I have, Chair Morrison, I have one quick follow-up, and that is we've spent some time earlier on what if, right? What if we decided, because we have an incoming new manager, an incoming new director, what if we said, let's go forward with 50% increase of the 4 positions, let's hire 2. So what's the impact? What's the immediate impact if we said, all right, we'll hire 2 parks attendants and we'll hold off on the lead hand and the 3rd parks attendant for now? Where would you go with that?
Thank you for the question, through you, Chair Morrison. So immediately, the impact would be adding back in part-time hours that we've already taken out. So it's not a no-cost option. So there's that. As well, we're still going to, if that were the case, we're still going to have increased challenges with staff turnover. So that problem hasn't been eliminated as much as we'd like to see. Yeah, and those are 2 significant ones, although it might be hard to capture an exact cost on that. We all recognize around the table that it is costly for that overturn, that turnover in staff. So those are 2 of the immediate things that come to mind. So I don't know if Denise, if our CAO might want to add to that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just to follow up on that as well, and Colleen certainly addressed the key components, but the thing that we can't lose sight of was this department came forward to the senior leadership team asking for 8 because it is not sustainable. The number of turnovers in staff that we've had, into Councillor Cucci's question about what the costs are, it's not just the cost of pay, it's the cost of people coming and going. And I think that Director would be able to answer that question. It's a huge cost to have the turnover in staff. So I just wanted to touch base on, this is a model that is not new to us. So for most of you, you'll recall that we did this in Public Works. We actually had Public Works staff that we were hiring seasonally, and it was a disaster and a huge cost and a huge negative effect to the organization because we couldn't retain staff on a part-time basis. We switched that model a number of years ago, and that has been very successful. We've seen efficiencies, we see staff that stay on. Yes, we do have people that still come and go, but a lot less. So this model that's being presented by our parks team is very consistent with that model, and it has been successful. Again, they came and asked for 8. The senior leadership team budget working group had said, that's a lot, obviously, in one bunch. Let's try it by switching the model to mirror that of Public Works, and let's revisit it after a full season. By then, we'll have a new director, we'll have a new manager of parks, and we'll have some statistics that show if what we believe was going to happen actually happened. So to Colleen's point, we actually might be before you next year saying, you know what, everything's working great, but we still need want extra full-time staff, or we still need 400 or 500 extra part-time hours. But this is the first step of trying to right-size this department. And I think that we have proven fact that it's worked in other departments as well. So.
Okay, over to Councillor Fitzgerald and then Deputy Mayor Armour.
Thanks, Chair Morrison. Just a couple final, one comment and one suggestion or question, I guess. The lead hand seems to be a bit of a misnomer to me because I don't know the lead hand I've seen working in leads by example and works harder than anyone on the crew. So lead hands are hands-on and work harder than anyone. They lead by example. So just to straighten that up. And I guess through you, Colleen, and maybe this is planning as well, is when we're moving forward, you talk about the new gardens, and I wonder if there's something we can come up with through planning is more naturalized, less maintenance. So moving forward, we don't create even more demand on this department. So that's it.
Thank you. And Colleen, do you want to comment on that at all, or are you okay?
I can if you'd like.
That's up to you. Looked like you might want to, but I'm also in favor of more naturalization.
So, through you, Chair Morrison, I'll take the opportunity to respond to that because we all know that when developers are in their sales phase, they make things look really pretty at the curb, right? And I understand that's their prerogative. And then there are boulevards and other gardens that when we get them, we assess, is this necessary? We do have some residents who, when they see that shift to more naturalization, they're alarmed at it. And I explained to them that that was a sales feature. And we will continue to monitor and manage the vegetation that is left behind in a way that we feel is appropriate. One of the complaints I had was about raspberry canes. And I said, they're natural, and the residents didn't like them. And I said that we're not gonna come in and clear cut the raspberry canes and mow the grass. This is what's intended. That's sometimes like, there's a blend, right? There's obviously right at the entrance for visibility, there's gonna be mowed grass and perhaps an entrance garden. But it doesn't have to be as extensive as what it appears in the sales phase. And I think everyone here understands that. And so we will continue to assess it and maintain at different levels as we take over the maintenance.
Great. I'd like to make a quick comment on that. I wonder, is it even feasible or reasonable that you could think of something along the lines of HOAs, like homeowners associations, that are in other places? I just think of a guy that lives way out Ravenscliff Road might not want some of his tax dollars going into maintaining raspberry canes and boulevards and islands and subdivisions in town. And so, but I also understand why a developer, they also want to beautify our town. Like sometimes they think, okay, this is actually going to make our subdivision look good, but also the town look good. So I don't know if that is something that we can discuss later. It's something to put on the radar. And then the people that are benefiting from those flowers can help pay for them. Just a thought. I'm sure I'm going to get in trouble for that, but that's okay. Deputy Mayor Armour.
Thanks, Chair Morrison. First off, just a comment. I just really hope everybody looks at this. You can see why we need a capital asset management plan. There's a lot of things on here that cost us annually on our budget process. So the question actually is for Keith, or yourself, Colleen, who are going to answer this. The part-time staff or seasonal staff, I guess, is that primarily students we're hiring to come in and do these jobs?
Through you, Chair Morrison, yes, in particular in the future, if this model is adopted, the remaining ones will be students. Typically, the locks hours are, and the days of the week that they're required, they're high school students. And that time frame meets our needs operationally and their school break, obviously. And so for some of our other short-term, we call them seasonals, most of them are students, not 100%, because we have some mature people in the community who are looking for that type of work. But typically, our demand season would be May to September, and again, that's when university students are out of school and available. So going forward, the few remaining hours that we put into seasonal will be almost 100% students, I believe.
Any other questions around the table? All right, I'll just make my comments. It's been no secret, when Councillor Clark and I started the budget process this year, our goal was to have the lowest possible tax increase at all. That was our goal. And based on last year, it was a reasonable number. And we went into this year thinking, okay, no matter what, that's it. It's kind of like Mike Tyson says, everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face, right? Like you have it, that's your plan, but then you get to the reality, and the reality is we have a growing community. We have a growing community that's also affected by inflation, affected by our capital asset management plan. So our goal maybe wasn't all that realistic, but when you look at something like this, and we look at the fact that we do want our town to be beautiful, we do want our garbages to be empty and our parks to be ready for everything, and our soccer fields and ball diamonds to be ready. I lean on people like Tina and Colleen and Lisa and Keith. I don't know what's needed there. So I know we've talked about, okay, 1 person, 2 person, 3 people. Knowing that that's still not even close to enough for what you want, I've come around to the point where I think we can cut all this for sure, but I don't think people are going to like what the town looks like. And I'm starting to realize that this is something that maybe hasn't been addressed for a bunch of years, and we're starting to finally get to where you guys can get to the number. I do know that we're already working on it, I think, with Keith and Lisa and the senior leadership team on a human resources plan. And that gets me very excited because when we start the budget process, Corey and I and Helena involved with all the SLT and our CAO, we have other initiatives that we want to do. We have things that we want to put into this town, like trails and everything else, and bigger projects. And then you start the budget and you realize, okay, we need this employee, this employee, and it wasn't on our radar necessarily. So what that means for the taxpayer needs to understand, we've put a lot of stuff to the side, things that we wanted to do, we put it to the side to make sure we address the more pressing items, like human capital and things like this. So when we have this human resources plan, if it's a 3 or 5 year plan, it's going to help us have a more consistent budget. There shouldn't be as many surprises, and I think that's kind of the direction we're going in, which I'm excited about. Go to Councillor Schumacher.
Sorry, and I guess one last comment is the fact that we talk about the turnover and everything that happens, but I mean, and I know Tina works her butt off and she is there for us every single day, but you also have to have a work-life balance, and I think that's what this kind of provides. And I think a lot of us have, since COVID, realized that that is key and important. And I know Councillor Morrison is big on mental health, and with, you know, Bell Let's Talk Day coming up at the end of this month, I think that is something that we have to look at, is this gives an opportunity for people to have that work-life balance that we are striving for, and for us as employers and the town to be presenting that option that this is a full-time opportunity for people and not just a part-time here, there, whatever. It maybe sets the pace for what we want to see within our town, that this is a growing community where people can have a full-time job and take pride in the work that they do.
Okay, so thank you very much, Colleen. We appreciate all your work on this and give us a lot to think about, for sure. Thank you so much. Okay, we are going to move on to item 5.1.3 with Director Mackenzie and Deputy Treasurer Diller to present the 2024 draft budget update.
Am I okay to go ahead? Yes. Okay. We promise we'll keep this short. So thank you, because we have provided a lot of information in prior meetings, but thank you, Chairman Morrison. We're pleased to provide this report as an update to the 2024 draft budget with the recommended changes from General Committee on December the 12th.
Scott, would you read the motion? Sorry.
So I lied to you, you're not ready to go, but you will be in just a second, I promise. And do you want me to read this entire motion? Because I will if you need me to. Okay, Jessica says yes. So she didn't even hesitate, so, okay. All right. If you guys want to take a bathroom break, it's a good time. Okay, we have a motion moved by Mayor Alcock and seconded by Councillor Fitzgerald. Whereas the draft budget attached to Report Corp 2023-86 was considered by committee on December 12, 2023, and postponed until January 11, 2024, with the following proposed changes. Delay funding for the Medill facility capital contribution of $50,000. Roads needs study consulting to come from working funds reserve, one time, $70,000. Utilize municipal accommodation tax funding for general revenues ongoing, $180,000. Remove directing savings from ending debenture to capital contributions. Reserve transfer and do not proceed with the increase in reserve contribution from the debenture savings, as outlined in budget and financial controls policy, $87,000. Center Street lease revenue brought into general revenues rather than transferring to the environmental reserve, $444,096. Change the overall increase in the capital budget for funding from $751,350 to $672,200. Removal of the community request identified in Report Corp 2023-71, 2024 draft capital budget as identified in Schedule G 2024 new community requests. Muskoka Heritage Place 2023 capital project to replace the museum ceiling and lighting in the amount of $30,000 be deferred and included in the 2024 capital budget to be funded from MHP Capital Reserve. Economic Development 2023 capital budget or capital project to replace the welcome sign in the amount of $10,000 be deferred and included in the 2024 capital budget to be funded from Economic Development Capital Reserve. And now, therefore, it is recommended that the draft budget attached to Report Corp 2023-86 with the changes as outlined in Corp 2024-02 be approved by committee for a total net levy of $21,991,439. Any questions or comments on that motion? Actually, we don't vote on it yet, so I'll pass it over to our Director and Deputy Treasurer.
Thank you, Chair Morrison. So as you'll recall, staff presented the draft budget in December with an overall increase of 15.26. And with the changes recommended by committee, this increase to the tax rate is now being proposed at 10.68. So overall, this would result in an increase in the tax bill when you factor in education and district of 6.64%. And for a home assessed at $300,000, the overall impact would be $137 per year for Huntsville taxes. This budget also includes an overall net increase to the capital contribution of $672,000, which would bring the total contribution to capital to almost $6.9 million. This also includes the continued contribution to the local share for hospitals in the amount of $230,000. So committee had requested at that meeting proposals for reducing the overall increase, and two have been provided in the report for committee's consideration. So one option is to reduce the capital contribution by $140,000, which would result in a reduction of the amount contributed to fund our capital plans. This approach would reduce the tax rate below 10%. However, would extend even further the timelines for Huntsville to be sustainable for capital asset funding. Another option is to increase the amount of MAT, the municipal accommodation tax funding, directed to general revenues by $140,000, which would also bring the tax rate below the 10%, but would also result in less municipal accommodation tax funding for future projects. So should committee approve the recommendations that are in this report, the overall tax rate would be, again, 10.68, with an overall tax rate impact of about 6.64. It is important to note that the budget being proposed, the amount that a taxpayer in Huntsville will continue to pay less than our nearest comparators in Muskoka. Overall, a taxpayer in Huntsville will pay approximately $1,420 per year on an assessment of $300,000, while those in Gravenhurst would pay approximately $1,494. And in Bracebridge, based on the draft budget, they would be paying about $1,661. So even with this increase, the bottom line is you would still be paying less in Huntsville than you would in those other two towns. So although this has been a very challenging budget to bring forward, this budget still continues to allow for the increased funding to capital reserves to maintain our important capital assets that service our community. It also continues to provide resources for the important services that our community requests and enjoys, while still remaining competitive amongst our other communities in Muskoka and across the province. Thank you.
Thank you so much to both of you for the report. I'm going to start around the table. Any questions? Okay. Councillor Renwick and then Mayor Alcock.
Thank you, Chair Morrison. And thank you, ladies, once again for coming back to us and giving us another update. Just a question, and I don't know anyone else around the table has thought of this, but if we took both options, could we take both options? It's like an or. Could it not be an or and an and? Like if we took the capital reduction or the capital funding down to $532,000 and in addition took the MAT tax. Have we ever?
That is an option that council could consider.
We could consider that. Okay. And if I may, just a follow-up, what is the ramification of taking this contribution of $140,000 less to our capital fund? Where does that put us next year or the following year if we take out $140,000 in our capital reserve? Like how far behind does it put us?
So I have to remember the percentage. I believe that right now we're currently funding around 32%. So we are far behind. And our long-term plan has been to continually and slowly increase that amount, which we've been doing. So whenever you pull that amount back, it just further extends that funding gap. And I believe that when we bring back the revised capital asset plan for the 2024 update, you'll see that we're probably even further behind based on the increase in prices for replacing those capital assets.
And sorry, if I may, just 'cause on that sort of same thread, are we behind or ahead of other municipalities doing the same sorts of things for setting money aside? Are we behind Gravenhurst or Muskoka or Bracebridge for the capital asset management plans? Do we know?
It's hard to give a definitive answer on that. I think most municipalities I think we've done a good job at continuing to stay on course with our plan. I think some municipalities are just starting to, and I don't want to speak about other municipalities, but I think some are just starting to realize that they do need to put aside a lot more money. I know it was publicly stated for the Muskoka Lakes one that their council actually added more money for their capital plans because they recognize that it's so important.
And before I get to Mayor, just a quick comment on that. Can you tell us and for everybody else the actual impact on the levy as a percentage of our increase in capital at the full amount that you want? Just so people know that that's something we almost have to do. And is it a 3%, a 2%? How much is it as far as our overall increase?
Sorry, I just want to make sure I'm understanding what the information you wanted.
So the amount that we want to increase our capital, I think the number is 600 and some odd thousand, but the original number that you wanted, what impact on the levy as a percentage is that number?
The 600 that we're proposing, is that what you're?
Sure.
Yeah,
Mhm.
okay. Sorry. Exactly.
And I guess the reason I bring it up, and while you're looking that up, is I just want the public to know that we have no choice but to increase our capital. Like, so by doing this stuff, we need to commend our finance team that they're pushing this. They don't push it for their own glory. They push it because 3, 4, 5, 8, 9 years down the road, when something has to be replaced, it'll have a less impact on the taxpayer those days because we're not doing debentures and dipping into other things. So I just want to see what the percentage would be.
So the percentages of change of the total levy is about 3.5% just for that capital increase. Yep.
So that's something for the public to be aware of. 3.5% of the 10.6 that's on the table is something that is still not enough, but we're doing it and we have to continue to do it. I'll go to Mayor Alcock next.
Thank you for that, Chair Morrison. And I'm kind of picking up on that point because I think it's really important to talk about, it's not just that we actually are required, legislated, to have capital asset management plans, and becomes mandatory that they're in place and that we're doing it by, was it 2020? It was 2020. So one of the things I did ask Julia to provide was to remind me how much we currently pay every year to pay down the debt that we incurred with the building of our wonderful assets, like our theater, our Summit Center, Conroy Park, Macaulay Robertson Park. And as we know, we can't imagine our community without these. But one of the things that we did when we built these is we debentured. So we've been paying back debt every year to pay for those structures. And I think, Julia, this year it's budgeted 870 something for our debenture repayment for this year, 2024.
840.
840, I was close, and I didn't look at my chart. So 840, and you look at the impact of that on our levy every year. So the benefit of what we're doing every year, contributing and increasing what we contribute to our capital reserves, makes all the sense in the world, so that when we have to do some significant work at the Summit Center, like replacing the pool or doing whatever, we actually have the money in our reserves to do it. So we're not in a position of having to pay. And I love what our staff have been doing year over year, every year, which is paying down our debt and not increasing our debt. So I don't, going back to the recommendation, I understand where you're coming from, Councillor Renwick, about what if we did both, and we've had those discussions. And through my mind, I don't want to touch that. I want to continue to increase the money that we put into our reserves for that one reason alone. Not only staff have been recommending it, but I think that is a really solid financial position to be in. So that's my comment on that, and I can come back to other things.
And one second, to hammer it home, to real life stories, we're all facing inflationary pressures, right? Whether it's a grocery store or anything we do. But the comparison here is if you own a home and you're not in a position where you can put any money aside for future repairs, and in the same year your septic goes and your shingles go and your drilled well goes. Maybe you're in for $50,000, you haven't put any money aside because times are tough. Now you got to borrow to fix those things. So instead of it costing you $50,000, in the end it'll probably cost you $100,000 or more. So what we're trying to do is make sure that the taxpayer doesn't get affected in that way. That's where it is. Okay, Councillor Fitzgerald?
And thanks, Chair Morrison. I guess a couple questions and a couple comments. I can't stress how important I think our reserves are. And we make money on our reserves. We invest them. And we know what is $10 today in reserve investment. If we have to debenture for a couple large projects that I see coming before we have the funds for them, it's going to be worth $15 or $16 on the levy versus 10 now. So as everyone has alluded to around the table, we need to focus on our capital contributions, our reserves. There's a few things in the budget I'm not overly happy we're taking out, but I understand the reasons why we are. I think a lot of them were made in an effort to ensure well-being and safety of constituents, and I think some of them aren't a big money item. And I always think about liability too. We have some great risks in the community, and I know we have a huge deductible for claims, and we have a reserve fund. I'm not familiar how much money is in that reserve for our deductible and insurance claims per incident.
I believe there's about 600,000 in that reserve.
There is. Okay. That's it.
I think somebody had their hand up, but Councillor Stone.
Thank you. The one thing in the resolution that I would like to change is we're looking at taking $180,000 from the municipal accommodation tax, and we're saying that this will be ongoing. We all know at this table, if we identify something as ongoing, it just kind of goes into the ether, and we never see that again. We never talk about that again. I would like to change ongoing to one time. Not that we can't take it again next year, but at least it will come back to this table and we can say, all right, yes, we want to do 100 or 180 again, but I would like to change ongoing to one time.
Thank you, Councillor Stone. I would concur with that. Any other questions around the table? Councillor Clark, then Mayor Alcock.
Thank you, Chair Morrison. So I have some comments I'd like to make on the last two reports. So thanks, Julia, for your report. So I just want to go back for a minute to the first report. So I understand that why the request has been made for the parks attendants and lead hand positions. Volume of work is pretty clear what they do, as was outlined in the charts and graphs. However, I need to weigh those needs against trying to keep taxes reasonable and fair for residents during a time when people are really struggling overall with household expenses. And I've said that before. I'm not disputing the need for more park staff, but I do have a problem with the timing of the 4 positions during this budget year. As I've mentioned at our last meeting, it's hard for me to justify 4 hires for the department in one budget year when we're looking at a tax increase like we are this year. I also said at our last meeting that these positions should be phased into future budgets, not into one budget. So I'm agreeable to filling 2 park attendance positions in this budget, and that's all. I understand we'd still need to use part-time hours to make up the difference, but that cost would be less than full-time positions, and it's something we're already doing anyway. We should consider using option 2 in the report and using the additional $140,000 in MAT funds to offset the budget. I agree with that. I also agree with Councillor Stone's comments that it should probably, the wording be changed from ongoing to one time. I would agree with that. So my position today is that I will only support a budget with 2 hires and the use of MAP funds outlined in option 2, along with the other recommendations listed in the motion. I also wouldn't support further reducing the capital contributions. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Clark, and you can certainly put an amendment on the table as well if you want to amend the motion, so we can consider that. Anything else around the table? Okay, Mayor Alcock?
Thank you, Chair Morrison. I guess, so Julie, are you working on what the impact of Councillor Clark's, just so we have an idea, if we did go forward with 2 hires, 2 parks attendants, and we did the 140 MAT tax, if we know what the, would that be?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. So if it's committee's desire to agree to proceed with just the 2 park attendants, then we'll take a 5-minute break while finance can figure out that change. But we'll just, if we can get perhaps consensus around the table before.
Be
Okay.
curious.
Well, I know that Tanya won't let me do a straw vote, so
Unless,
I think we'd have
Mr.
to
Chairman.
officially have an amendment on the table, right?
We would have to break, I guess that's the point. We just would have to take a few minutes to figure
Okay.
that in.
You know, why don't we take a few minutes break?
Okay.
A little bio break. I could certainly use one, and that'll give Director McKenzie time to just gather that. We'll come back in about, it is 11:03. We're going to start promptly at 11:10.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, thank you, everybody. I'd like to bring this meeting back to order and apologize to everyone. We just wanted to make sure we had the motion and everything else proper before we went live again. At the moment, I'd like to ask around the table any other comments or any other questions. At the moment, go to Mayor Alcock.
Yes, thank you. Following in line with Councillor Stone's comment about one of the paragraphs in our resolution, and that is with respect to the wording around the Centre Street lease revenue. And the way we currently have it, Centre Street lease revenue brought into general revenues rather than transferring to environmental reserve, which I absolutely support doing that this year. But I also want to know that we will be coming back to this next year and that we can consider, do we do it exactly the same? Do we contribute 100,000 back into the environmental reserve? I think it's really important that we identify that so that we know we will do that in some respect, or at least have the conversation. So I believe some wording has been proposed, but I wanted to put that on the table.
Very good. Any other comments at the moment? Councillor Stone, go ahead.
Thanks. So it was suggested that perhaps we use an additional 140,000 from the MAT tax. And I'm not in favor of that because there's been many discussions ongoing about using our portion of the MAT funds to help increase housing. And we have some great plans that are about to come forward, and I don't want to lose that opportunity.
Okay, and go back to Mayor Alcock on that, and then Deputy Mayor Armour.
Okay, thank you, Chair Morrison. So I guess we're speaking to the suggestion by Councillor Clark, and I wanted to start by saying I completely understand where Councillor Clark is coming from with respect to, you know, we're looking at a 10.65 increase, and it certainly, it hits everybody. But I will say this, that having gone through the last presentation, I do fully support the increase of the four members of four parks employees, and for all of the reasons we talked about. And you know, when you hear the current manager say that I may be coming back next year, so I'm just putting this in light of all of the things that I certainly hear from a number of constituents, the things that they want us to be doing in the area of parks and trails and all of those good things, that we're encouraging it in our development. So we definitely need the people to look after that. And to Councillor Cloutier's comment, this is the face of our community. When people arrive, they talk about what the hanging baskets and all of the things. So I support the addition of four as presented. I've already said that I don't support the idea of decreasing the increase on our capital, so I won't repeat that, but for all of the reasons we've talked about and we understand. With respect to the MAT tax, I wavered on that, and I get, you know, one day I thought, okay, we can do it, and we're just going to do it for another year. But as Councillor Stone just said, we've had discussions. This will be the year that we actually might figure out a way to use some of our MAT tax dollars to go towards some housing initiative. We're not sure which one it is yet, but we actually are starting to have those discussions. And I'd hate for us to say, well, that's a great idea, but this year isn't the year to do it because we've committed it all. And then when we start deliberating our 25 budget, then we will have to account for what we use those MAT tax dollars for, you know, or unless we want to do it again, and then where are we at with our housing initiatives? So I think it's a cycle I'd rather get out of as opposed to do more of. So I look at this budget overall, and you know, again, I'll repeat, it's not something I want to do and be part of my legacy or our legacy year over year, so next year it's another 10% in the year after. I see this as the year that we did a lot of right sizing through all of our departments. If we look at the additions to planning, that I had direct requests from the development sector who said, you don't have enough planners because we're not getting turnaround fast enough. So we responded. And we've right-sized our clerks department. We've right-sized our IT department, but we've done that in collaboration with the municipality of Lake Base. So it was rather creative, and I think we should do more of that in other positions. So you look across the board, and now we're dealing with parks. So I think from that perspective, we've made a lot of decisions that had a huge impact on this year's budget. My hope, and I probably should be stronger than hope, that next year will look a lot different if we make the decision this year. And that's what I've come to in my own mind, that I know there will be a number of people who will say, well, you guys just didn't listen. But I also have a lot of people in our community who love the services that we provide and want to see those services. And if I asked and said if we all asked and said, okay, let's try and bring this in at 7%, I don't know what we cut. There are so many things in our budget that are mandatory. Do we cut fire services? No. Do we cut fleet to support fire services? No. We heard about parks. I won't go into that. But I don't want to cut back on what we do at community services. I've heard nothing but positive things over the holidays about what we offer there, and from people out of town who are using our services. Maybe there's a question about that. But I look at it and I think that's not the legacy I want, where we're cutting. And as we mentioned earlier, part of our responsibility is to pay for these incredible assets that previous councils brought to us, like the theater, like the Summit Center, Conroy Park, Macaulay Robertson Park, and it goes on. And I think, and I'm happy to pay for those, but we pay a lot every year, and we continue to pay down that debt. So from my perspective, I'm happy with the proposed recommendation that we have before us today. Happy is probably not the right choice of word, but I certainly, I will support it and willingly support it for all of the reasons I just mentioned, and we've talked around the table. But I see this as a one-time, and that next year it's a lot better. So that's my overall comment and about certainly the position that was put forward by Councillor Clark. And again, I totally appreciate where you're coming from.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Armour, please.
Thank you, Worship. Hard to follow that. I support a lot of what you said there. But I just had actually a question for the CEO that she probably needs to answer, and then I'll have one for Director McKenzie too. So can you just explain so everybody knows what the MAT tax is and what the provincial government says we can use that for? So I'm sure there's people watching today that probably don't even know what MAT tax is.
I'd be happy to. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Armour. So a number of years ago, I can't remember the exact year, our mayor at the time, it was Mayor Scott Aitchison, was pleading with the government, you need to help us figure out how we can generate extra revenue not on the backs of our taxpayers. And he advocated that, him and council, multiple times. And I'd like to think perhaps as a result of that, or at least from the province said, okay, we hear you loud and clear. We are going to give municipalities the ability to implement a municipal accommodation tax. And they provided parameters around that tax that you could set the percentage. They had parameters about how the money could be spent. At least 50% had to go to the tourism agency that you appointed. And they said, here you go, this is what you asked for, this is what you get. So Huntsville Council at the time took that opportunity and implemented the municipal accommodation tax. That tax is we call it beds, or heads and beds, is generated from people that come to our community. They rent hotel rooms, they stay in short-term rentals, and that money, as decided by council, is divided, and I think the split right now is 68-32. 68%, is it 62-38? Thank you. And a portion of that goes to our designated tourism agency, which is, it's now called the DMO, DMO, sorry, DMO, I keep calling them HMATA, but it's the Destination Marketing Organization. And they take those funds and they spend it accordingly as per their provisions. And the municipality retains their portion. And they can use it to help the taxpayers offset expenses so it doesn't land in their lap. So that is the intention of that money, is for the municipality to use it to help alleviate the pressures that taxpayers pay in our community. And it's the one tool that the province has given us outside of generating revenues through taxation, grants, and user fees. That is the only other option we have. So I hope that explains that clearly, Deputy Mayor. Thank you.
That's perfect. Thanks very much. So my question to Julie, I'm just curious, how much money do we actually have in our max tax account right today?
The estimated ending balance for 2023 is around $1 million in our reserve for Huntsville.
So I guess with that, it shows that we have a reserve set up with almost $1 million. That's perfect to try to address the housing crisis we're going through today. I'm not really sure. I know I've been part of the conversations with looking at incentives, but I know we need to get people moving off the streets into heads in beds. And so I think it's a great opportunity for us. So I just wanted everybody to know how much money we actually have and what it's used for. Thanks.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Armour. I think Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thanks, Chair Morrison, and I appreciate the comments made so far. I fully support the budget as recommended. The only additional comment I have is I feel that the mayor referred to right sizing, and couldn't agree with her more in the right sizing of departments. And I think we really have to consider moving forward right sizing our reserve contributions. I think we can do a better job there. And when I look around at our comparators, and some of them have smaller increases than us, but for smaller communities with less people, less kilometers of road, less sidewalks, less facilities, they're working with budgets that are considerably more than ours, 28, 29, $30 million. So I think somewhere along the line, we have been too concerned about the little increases and appeasing our community. And we should strive to do that in every way possible. But somewhere down the road, this is going to be too insurmountable. So we need to, moving forward, address this and right-size our whole operating and capital budget.
Mayor Clark. There has been a Mayor Clark here before. Councillor Clark, please.
Thank you, Chair Morrison. I definitely don't want to be the mayor. So probably last comments for me. I won't put a motion on the table based on the comments I made, because I can clearly see the support isn't here at the table. But I also won't be supporting this budget as presented without the changes I commented on.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Schumacher.
Thank you, through you, Chair Morrison. I'm just going to reiterate that I'm fully in support of the budget as it sits now. What we're proposing, I think we've seen the benefits in the Community Services Department. We increased, like the mayor talked about, right? That was another area that we increased, was the lead hand in community services. That extra lead hand has done an amazing job at our facilities, and creating that opportunity within parks to mirror our hours within community services, I think, is going to be a great asset to the town. The mayor talked about cutting services. None of us want to do that. We had a discussion about cutting services at the locks, and how much feedback did we get from our community on that one in particular. So again, we don't want to see services cut. It is, to the mayor's point, I have heard nothing but good reports about, the free skates over the holidays at our Summit Center when we didn't really have a lot to do because the winter wasn't really here. that facility was used. I talked to the staff there, and it was just phenomenal to be able to have that. And again, we don't want to see the services cut. So yes, this is a year. We might have to bite a bullet here. I don't want to tap into capital funding, as you say. I mean, we have some great facilities, and I know one Councillor Det Schumacher put a foot in the ground back in like 1984 to build that pool, but it does have a 10-year limit on it now. So we need to be, as I've always said, looking to the future. It's maybe not this council, but it's gonna be a couple of councils from now that we have to, you know, replace some of those facilities that are out there to the benefit of our community. It is growing, and we're gonna hear about all the other things that people are gonna want eventually too. So those are my comments. I believe in this budget and what the staff have brought forward. And yes, we'll have to bite it, and hopefully, as the mayor says, by next year, it'll look a little better.
Councillor Renwick?
Thank you, Chair Morrison. I too support this budget, and the proposal that I made initially about, you know, the two options, obviously they're not on the table, but when Deputy Mayor Armour brought up or asked the question about how much money we do have in the reserves for the MAT tax, having $1 million sitting in there now that has not been allocated at this point for housing, it could be in the future. I would still suggest perhaps that we think about the $140,000 that could possibly go, like the second option, to put some of that money towards the budget this year. Just an idea. So of the two options, I would take number 2. And I just want to say as well, I think all of us as councillors are very aware of what the public says and comments on when something like this, like a budget that comes out in this with this number. I think we know that once the number comes out, there will be a lot of discussion, but I feel very strongly that we have the support of staff, we have the support, and I think I've come to the terms that I've realized that this budget is high, and I think there will be pushback, there will be feedback, but it'll be something that, looking down the road, it's something that we need to do, and I think this is what the mayor spoke to as well. So it'll be hard in the beginning to deal with it, but I think also the communication that's going to come out. I would be able to speak to this budget and speak to it clearly and say this is why we're doing this, and to support the reasons why we're adding the parks people, we're adding the other staff, so I'm in support of this budget as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? We're about to go to the vote. I'd like to make my comments on this. This has not been a fun budget process. I don't think any of us would call it fun at all. And I love that the public keeps us accountable. I love that. If there isn't checks and balances, if there isn't accountability, a municipality could run wild, and that will never happen in a democratic situation. We are held accountable. I was on the radio station this morning answering questions. Like, we're here to answer questions. So I want accountability, I want checks and balances, but I will tell you, what I won't accept is people bashing staff over this budget. I won't listen. I won't listen. And the reason why, I'll take some of the blame for getting us into the situation where you might have a 10% increase. Our staff, especially Julia and Riva last year, warned me when we brought up some unique ways to bring the budget down. And let's face it, for optics, we want the taxpayer to think we're doing a good job in keeping their taxes down, and I'm with Councillor Clark, that's my mission. But some of the stuff we did, we were warned that it would come back to bite us. And guess what? Here we are. It has come back to bite us. Because those one-time things where we take money from here, take money from there, and a lot of municipalities are doing that this year so that they look good in the public eye. We could also do that. If we want to just look good, we can do the same thing. But guess what? Either next year or next term, someone's going to pay for it. And we might look good today, but down the road, we're going to know that we screwed the town over. And my thoughts are right now, yes, is it going to come in over 10%? Most likely, based on the vote, it will. But if we don't do this next year, we're not going to be in a position where we can make a responsible budget where we actually take care of the town's needs. Right now, we're just right-sizing because we've ignored stuff for so long. So do not blame the staff. There is nobody on our staff of many hundred people that want taxes to be high. I've not met one of them. And when I was on the outside looking in only about a year and a half ago, I might have been one of those people that thought, oh, there's too many staff. There's too many staff. Council's dumb. Council, okay, they don't care about the money. Well, I can tell you for sure, every single person around this table probably cares more than most of the general public about this tax rate because we're the ones that are going to wear it. So don't for a minute think that we're doing this willy-nilly. Hundreds and hundreds of hours have gone into this. And if we thought that we could give you a 4% tax increase and still have the town that you want to live in, we'd do it. We absolutely would. But we're faced with a 3.5% starting point just to get the capital at 32% of where it should be. Like, we're still not where we should be. And then you want us to wipe that out to get it down to 8% so we look good? It's not good. It just won't work. So when our staff are working their asses off all year to make things work for this town, and then we as a council go to our senior leadership team and say, bring us a budget that runs this town the way we want to run it and the way that the public wants it to be, and then we shit on them saying that they're spending money willy-nilly? No, I won't deal with that. And if you want to go on social media and bash us, bash me. I'm the chair of this committee. I'll take it. You can call me, you can email me, I'll answer any questions. But I will tell you, if you sat down with me or our CAO or our treasurer for half an hour even, you might have a different outlook on why we're making these decisions. You might not bash people on social media. You might understand that we've had so much stress leave and mental health issues on staff because they are understaffed in almost every department. They were understaffed in almost every department. We've made these decisions to give you the town you want and give our staff a place to work that we can be proud of so that when we go out for positions, we're competitive and people want to work here. So I can stand behind this budget all day. If you want to bash me, do it. My number's on the website. But do not bash our staff, all right? That's where I'm at with it. Saying that, I'll go over to Deputy Mayor Armour.
Thanks. See, I just like to get the last word in. I'm just wondering if Julie could let us know at the end of the day what the tax rate's going to be and how that compares to other municipalities in the District of Muskoka.
Sorry, I don't have the numbers for all of the different areas, all the different areas for Muskoka, because the townships their tax rate's quite a bit different because they don't have the same services that the towns do, and they have a lot bigger assessments, so their tax rates are inherently very low. I do have the ones for Bracebridge and Huntsville. Just one second. So for Huntsville, the tax rate, oh, sorry, just one second. I just have to take that amount out. I must have put that in there. So Huntsville would be about 0.4735%. Gravenhurst would be approximately 0.4979%. And Bracebridge is looking at about 0.5536%. So again, if you looked at Huntsville, you'd be paying about $1,420 for Huntsville taxes for the year on $300,000 assessment. Gravenhurst would be $1,494, and Bracebridge would be $1,661.
That's great. So even with over 10% increase, we still have the lowest tax rate compared to the other towns.
That's correct.
Thanks.
Great question, Deputy Mayor Armour. Any other comments or questions before we call the vote? CAO Corey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I do just want to take a few minutes to thank Council for all of your support with this budget. It was not easy for any of us, and our team did an absolutely amazing job. And our goal is to do whatever we need to do to serve you in the community. And by granting us the support and the tools that we need to do that, we are going to be awesome. So thank you very much.
Amazing. Thank you very much, CEO Corey. Now, did we want to show a video before we vote? We have a little video we want to show because, like I mentioned, I knew way less than I thought I knew about how a town runs. And this video is very informative to show the public what the process is like. So I think we're going to get it going now.
The town's annual budget must be balanced, meaning every dollar required for municipal services must be raised. Huntsville keeps a third of the funds raised through property tax. The rest are diverted to other important services such as education, water, sewer, and waste collection. Approximately 65% of the taxes that Huntsville retains are used for fire and emergency services, roads, storm sewer, streetlights, sidewalks, parks, and cemeteries. Budget decisions made in the short term have a big impact on the future. With growth, higher usership of services means more resources are required to support the programs that residents know and love. With every budget annually, we are guided by these priorities: balance, impact on taxpayer and affordability, as well as service delivery. Stay informed.
Thank you. And a quick reminder, if you look at your tax bill, the percentage of that money that actually comes to us to operate our budget is a very small percentage. Is there anything else before we call the vote, CEO Corey? See the amendments? Oh, yeah, we need to see the amendments, and I need to read the amended portions of the motion. We're just going to call that up. If Jessica, let me know which portions, or do you want me to read the whole thing or just the amendments?
Sorry, you can read the moved by and seconded by.
So we have a motion moved by Mayor Alcock and seconded by Councillor Stone.
The amendments are shown in red on.
Okay, so there are two lines where we did make an amendment. So utilize municipal accommodation tax funding for general revenues, one time, $180,000. Center Street lease revenue brought into general revenues rather than transferring to environmental reserves, $444,096, one time. And the intention of that is that we will have a robust discussion about both those items next year. Any comments on the amended motion? Any questions? So I'm going to call the question on the amendment. All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay. And now I'll call the question on the motion as amended. All those in favor? And all those opposed? So that motion does carry, and that puts to bed the budget process. And I again want to thank everyone and to remind everyone that we are available for comments and questions, maybe over a coffee. I am going to now move on, or do I go back to Mayor Alcock now that we're done my portion? Okay, back to you, Mayor Alcock.
Thank you, Chair Morrison, and thank you for doing a fantastic job at chairing that portion of the meeting, well, the whole meeting, because that was the purpose of it. So moving along, we do not have anything under closed session, and we don't therefore have anything under business arising from closed session. And so I have one final motion to read, and that it has been moved by Councillor Stone, seconded by Councillor Cloutier. It is recommended that we do now adjourn at 11:48 a.m. All those in favor? And that carries.